Good morning, dear students. Welcome to another EVS 1 class. Okay, so far, what were we learning? We were learning about birds, right? And today, we are going to learn about the beaks and the feet of birds and how it helps the birds to move around, to live around. Okay, alright, let's get started. So far, what have we learned? That birds have some special features, right? That makes them different from other animals. And what do birds have? Birds have feathers, and then they have a pair of wings, they have a tail, they have beaks, and they also have claws. And when you see an animal with these features, what can you say? You can say for certain that the animal is a bird, right? So when you see a crow, and what do you notice? You notice that the crow has wings, feathers, tails, right? And then you can say that and as such you can say that the crow is a bird, right? Remember that? We had also learned some other things. What did we learn? We learned the use of beaks, right? Birds have beaks. They do not have mouth like us. Birds have beaks, and what do they do with the beaks? They gather food, reap, tear and crush food. Parrots use their beaks as an extra hand for climbing. Remember this? We have done this in our previous class. We also learned that birds use beaks to build a nest and tie knots, right? So far we had done, this is all we had done in our previous class. We had also learned something else in our previous class. Remember the video we saw? That birds use their beaks to clean and comb feathers. That is also what birds do with their beaks. Okay. After that we have, okay, remember children, what did we learn before? We had also learned in our previous classes that ducks and swans have broad flat beak, right? That is what we learned in our previous class. We had also learned that parrots, ducks and swans have broad flat beaks, right? And they use the beaks like a spoon. The beaks have tiny holes on either side of the beaks with which they take their food, remember? We had also learned that parrots, what beaks did parrots have? They had strong curved beaks. We had seen a video on that as well, remember children? We had done this in our previous class. What else did we do? We learned about the short pointed beak of pigeons and peacocks and also sparrows. That also we saw a video in our last class. Okay, I am simply recapitulating what we had learned before. Alright. Now short hard pointed beaks. Okay, we had done that before. Alright. Now we come to long chisel like beak. Okay. So long chisel like beaks. Okay. So who has long chisel beaks? Woodpeckers have long chisel like beaks. And what do they do with that? They tap the bark of a tree. They make holes in the tree trunks in search of insects. Alright. So woodpeckers have long sticky tongues with which they can pull the insects and worms out of the holes and they eat them. So see the previous picture. In the picture you can see an woodpecker, right? So what does the woodpecker do? The woodpecker has a long chisel like beak, okay? And what does it do? It pecks the bark of the tree in search of insects and worms, and it has a long tongue, and with that what does it do? It pulls the insects and worms out and eats them, okay? And that is why what has a long chiseled beak? An woodpecker. Alright, so we can say that woodpeckers have long chisel like beaks. Okay, what is this? This bird is a kingfisher, right? And a kingfisher has a long broad pointed beak. What does it do with a long broad pointed beak? They use the long broad pointed beak to pick up fish from the water. So where do kingfishers live, students? They live in water, right? And what do they eat? They eat fish for their food. And as such, what do? They use their long, broad, pointed beak to pick up the fish and eat them. Okay. And what is this? This is an eagle and a hawk, right? And do you notice the shape of their beaks? What does it look like? They have a sharp, hooked and strong beak. Why do they have a sharp, hooked and strong beak? Because eagles and hawks, they are the kings of the sky, right? They fly high up in the sky, and when they see a small rat, what do? They pick it up with their sharp, hooked and strong beaks. So what do sharp, hooked and strong beaks do? Eagles and hawks have a sharp, hooked and strong beaks that beaks to easily tear the flesh of the prey. They eat rats and lizards and snakes and frogs and rabbits and even small birds. So they do need a sharp, hooked and strong beak, right? For what? For eating rats, lizards, snakes, frogs, rabbits and even small birds. And what is this? This is a hummingbird. And what do hummingbirds have? Hummingbirds have a thin, long, pointed beak, right? And what do they do with their thin, long, pointed beak? Alright, what do hummingbirds do? Hummingbirds, they suck nectars out of the flowers, okay? And they have thin, long, pointed beaks for sucking out nectar from the flowers, okay? A hummingbird does not sit on the flower when feeding. It hovers around the flowers, and what does it do? It uses its long, thin, pointed beaks to suck the nectar out of the flowers. Alright? Okay. So far we had learned about the beaks of the birds, right children? And now what will we do? We will learn about the feet of the birds. Alright. Now, why did birds have beaks? Birds had beaks for tying knots, for eating, for preening, for combing their feathers, right? And birds also have various uses of their feet. And why do they use their feet? For climbing, protecting, holding food, swimming. Alright. So depending upon the functions of the feet of the birds, they can be classified into different types of feet. Okay. Alright. So what is this? This is a sparrow. And what kind of feet do sparrows have? Sparrows have 3 toes in the front and 1 toe at the back. Okay. You can see children in the pictures that their 3 toes are in the front and 1 of them is in the back. And why is it so? Alright, they have 3 toes in the front and 1 toe at the back to hold on to branches and wires. The sparrow clamps its toes around the branch so that it does not fall off. So have you seen sparrows, children? What do? They use their they have something like this, okay? They have 3 toes in the front and 1 toe at the back. And what does it do? It holds on to branches and wires like that, okay? I have 4 fingers, but sparrows have 4 total toes and 3 toes in the front and 1 toe in the back, okay? And it holds on to wires and branches so that it does not fall off. Alright? Alright. So have you seen cranes, children? Have you seen cranes in the zoo? So what does cranes do? Cranes have long, thin feet, okay? Alright children? They have long, thin feet, and where do they use their long, thin feet for? They live in the water, and they can walk around with their long, thin feet in the water, and it helps them to swim and catch small little animals, okay? Small little animals and fishes. So what do cranes and herons do? They have long, thin feet that helps them to walk and swim in the ponds. Alright children? Now, have you seen birds like woodpeckers and parrots? We discussed about them, right? So woodpeckers and parrots, they have 2 feet that help them to climb, 2 toes at the front and 2 toes at the back. All right. They have they have 2 feet. That means they have 2 feet and 2 toes at the front. In the front there are 2 toes. In the back there are 2 more toes, and it helps them to climb trees. Where do woodpeckers and parrots live? They live in the trees, right? And as such, they have 2 toes in the front and 2 toes in the back, and it helps them to climb trees. Okay, children? Now, let us come to eagles, vultures, and hawks. Remember, children, we learned that some birds, what do they have? They have claws, right? And if you go near them, what will happen? They will scratch you. So, animals like eagles, vultures, and hawks, they have talons. Okay, they have pretty large claws. You can see in the picture that they have very sharp claws. And what do they do? Generally, what do they eat? They eat small animals and rats and lizards, right? So they fly high up in the sky, and when they see a small animal, what do? They pick it up with their claws or with their beak, and they hold firmly to the prey and eat them. Okay? Alright. So, ducks. You have all seen ducks and penguins, right? And where do they live? Ducks and penguins, they live in the water. They live in the water. Penguins live in South Pole. In our last class we had discussed that. So they have a special kind of feet. Can you see in the picture, children? They have something called webbed feet. Okay. All the toes are interconnected by a very small skin-like structure. Okay. And what do? It helps them to swim around through water. Alright. Now, children, suppose you have a friend called Raj, alright, and he goes in his village and he sees ducks around. What kind of feet will he notice on the duck? The duck will have webbed feet, right? And suppose your friend Sam, okay, you have a friend called Sam, and he went to a zoo, okay, children, and he sees an eagle, alright, and he sees an eagle who's holding on to a rat. So how will the eagle hold on to the rat? With his powerful curved talons. Okay, children? Alright. Now let us move on to birds like emus. Have you seen an emu before? They are not native to India, but emus are something that looks like the first picture. Alright. Emus are birds which are generally found in Australia. And do you know what they have? They have very long thin legs with which they run very fast. And their feet, they have 3 forward toes. Okay. Emus have 3 forward toes which are facing forward. And what does it help them to do? It helps them to run very fast. Okay, children? So I hope you liked and enjoyed today's class. And if you have any problem or any doubts, please let me know. Alright? Thank you. See you in your next class.